Alright, so hello everybody. This is episode 2 of the More Knowledge Show, coming to you live from a garage someplace in Alabama. And if you hear a lot of birds, once again, we are outside and it is the middle of the day, so there's a lot of animals. It's actually not that hot today, so that's good, so I can record outside. The reason why I'm not recording inside because there's a lot of other people inside the house, and I do not want them hearing me talking about how the world is coming to an end. Because, I need to scare people, but I don't want them to think I'm crazy. Because then I won't be able to live in this house anymore. They'll probably send me to some insane asylum, which would not be good. Because in an insane, one day I would not be surprised if one day a car pulls up and then people with suits and sunglasses or whatever, they come to my door and they carry me away. And if that happens, if I disappear, just know it's because everything I've been saying is completely true. Alright, so if that ever happens, if I do get taken away and thrown into some sort of asylum or prison, never to be seen again, just know all these recordings, all these articles I wrote, there's a lot of truth in them. And you probably should continue what I started. But anyway, this is the second episode of the More Knowledge Show. Each week, we're going to try to continue to improve. We're going to try to cover more topics. But sometimes we'll pick a big topic and kind of just put all our focus on that topic because some topics are big. Sometimes we'll talk about things that are going on in the world right now, like all the stuff around us, or we'll talk about issues that, it may not be seen right now, but could potentially be seen in the future. Or we can talk about things that happened in the past and how that could change the way things are done now. But it's a lot of things to talk about. And I'm not really going to put any restrictions on the things that can be discussed on this show, because we're just trying to, it's called the More Knowledge Show. So that's anything that involves knowledge, and a lot of times extra knowledge beyond the stuff that we're already told, because a lot of that stuff is either misleading or it isn't enough, because our brains can store a lot more information than we have in them, or a lot of our brains are filled with information that isn't important, and we need to clean our brain and add in some good stuff so that way we can grow up to be big, strong, independent humans. And even if you're 40 years old, a lot of you guys still have not grown up yet. There are 2-year-olds who are more grown up. And some
with today's show,
fully grown adults.
A lot of things we talk about have a similar theme.
So
a lot of it
anyway
has to do with stuff that
a lot of it has to do with creating pictures. So they create a picture that we see, and that's how we see the world. But their picture could be wrong. And I think a lot of the way they use to paint these pictures, they throw these. If you watch the mainstream news, you'll see all these things like the economy grew at 3.2%, or you hear the unemployment rate hit an all-time low, and then they've used those numbers and basically kind of said, because of these numbers, we are very prosperous, things are great. And a lot of people truly believe that. A lot of people truly think that America is in its strongest position that it has ever been. A lot of people think that, we are pretty much invincible, and that all these, and they use these same pieces of these indicators that have been wrongfully put at a higher place than they really should be. Just because output supposedly grew at 3%, it does not mean that people are really in a better position, because there's a million of other things that show that people are suffering, that people do not have enough, and a lot of it is systematic, and it was placed but the same people who are telling us that things are great were the people that created the problems. So, we are taking advice from the people that have been killing us. So, we should think about that. But one thing to consider is, like, we have an entire generation, a large generation of people who are about to enter retirement age, but literally cannot retire. And that is not an exaggeration. Like, even in a very good scenario, people barely have enough money to get by. Like, so let's assume that, you have a good amount of savings. Like, let's just say you have average savings, you have a pension, which is something that, some type of retirement account, which is something that a lot of people don't have, but let's just assume you do. And then you have, Social Security. So if you add in, like, the average of all three of those things, of the average, like, yearly income that you would receive if you have those three things, it's about $29,000. And that is a very good scenario. So in a very good scenario, someone retiring and they have all three of those things, they would only get $29,000 a year, which is not enough. But here's the thing. Most people do not have those retirement accounts. Only 27% of people have a pension. Only 33% of people have a 401k. So, you look at that, and then, majority of, 1 in 5 American adults have literally nothing saved. Some people have like 5%, and then, all right, so let's just say less than a third of Americans have over 11% of their income saved each year. So you look at that, and the reason is not because these old people are just stupid and they have no idea how to use their money. Majority of it's because they simply have too many other expenses. So this could be they took out too much. They have too many obligations. They have too much. They took out a loan, and they have to pay it back. They took the cost of living has been rising a lot faster than their income, and you look at that. So we have a situation where, it's right in front of us. People can barely afford to live, and because of that, they basically can never retire. So, who cares if the unemployment rate, another thing is, a lot of these people have blamed the fact that they're working very low quality jobs. And the thing is, the unemployment rate, it does not account for the fact that a lot of the people working are working in jobs that are very low quality compared to the jobs that they're actually trying to work in. So the jobs that people actually want, that pay people what they want, are not available, and the only ones available are low-paying jobs. So yes, while some people are working, they're not working. It's still a very bad situation. But the thing is, it's not being shown to us in the unemployment rate. And the unemployment rate is showing that a lot of people are working, which is true. They are working, but they're working in like terrible jobs. They're not making any money. And then the cost of living is rising, despite what the inflation numbers supposedly show you. Clearly the cost of living has been rising because people are taking on more. People have more credit. So all of that equals people cannot afford to live. Well, people can, but it's barely. And then people have no money to save. People have no money to contribute to a retirement plan. And even if they did, they're still, on average, they're getting about $29,000 a year. They'll be able to get from these accounts. So you look at that and you see, because this generation retiring is a very big generation. It's very big. It's a lot bigger than all these other generations. So we're about to have all these people retiring. That's less people spending money. That's people are going to be taking their money out of the stock market. So that's going to hurt the stock market because people aren't, usually when people get older, they're not taking risks, investing money in speculative stocks. All of that is done, and people are going to need someone to help them. It's probably got to be everyone else, because it's a side effect of a weak economy. It's a side effect of having a problem, and instead of solving the problem directly from the start, we simply just pushed it back. And now we have people who are old and they're dying, and they have nothing to support themselves. So, you see that, and then, you would think if majority of the a large chunk of the population is about to enter a stage where they can barely support themselves, how is that considered strong? How can we say that's strong? Well, and then, I think some people realize it's a problem, but, we've just been taught to forget about stuff like this. And instead, we're more worried about things like a space force, or like a military in space, or, we put our worries on things that are so insignificant. But if you simply just look at things, people cannot survive. And so it doesn't matter how fast the stock market's moving up, or supposedly how strong the jobs market or the economy is, because the results on people at the end of the day is not good. And that's what's most important, is what is actually happening to real people, not a number on the computer screen or what some guy on TV might tell you. So anyway, that's the first thing. All right, so another problem we talk about is another side effect of us not willing to solve our problems when they first arise, and just pushing the problems back so other generations can deal with them, is you look at the amount of liabilities, let's just say the size of the liabilities that the United States government has. So you hear a lot of numbers. You hear $22 trillion in debt, and that's bad. That's pretty bad. But the thing is, it's not as bad as it really is. $22 trillion in debt, we're not going to be able to pay that back. But, what if I told you it's actually $222 trillion in debt? Because in that $22 trillion does not account for all the unfunded liabilities, which basically includes promises that the government made to these certain people. They made a lot of promises to Americans. They made promises that, we're going to give you a certain amount of money when you retire. And, they took tax money, they invested it, and then they assumed that over time that money will generate a certain return. And then, when the time comes, the government will be able to pay this money back out to the people, and everything will be great. Well, clearly they underestimated it. They underestimated how much that they would actually be able to make. And, we have a giant hole, a gap that's estimated to be around $200 trillion of unfunded liabilities. So this basically means that the government is it's failed. It's bankrupt. You look at the state of Illinois. There's cities, well, not just Illinois, there's cities across America that are literally can't pay their obligations, and they're going through, they are failing. They're failing because we made obligations and we were not able to properly use our resources. And instead of dealing with the issue, instead of cutting some things,
or adding some things when the time
was to solve the problems. We pushed the problem back, and now we have $200 trillion in unfunded liabilities. And see, what's going to happen is, a lot of these retirement accounts that people rely on that are not funded properly, they're going to have to be both cut, and taxes are going to have to be raised, because they're going to have to raise taxes, and so people are going to be getting less money. The people who rely on these programs, they're going to get less money, and everyone else is going to get taxed higher. So that's going to destroy the economy. But even then, they're not going to cover trillions and trillions of dollars. So that's going to create a serious problem. And it's hard to even say how that could turn out. But that could seriously lead to a complete failure in trust of the system. Complete failure, because they promised these people that when the time comes, they're going to get a certain amount of money, and they completely screwed up. They completely. But see, that's never talked about. And the reason why it's never talked about, because they want people to continue to trust the system. They want people to continue to trust, the American system. That our system, we're the strongest and most powerful in the world, and you can put our money with us, you can put our trust with us, and we will deliver results. And because of that, a lot of countries, use our currency. They use our currency for trade, and that has propped up the American economy, really. That has allowed for Americans to get cheap loans. That has allowed for Americans to be able to import things cheaply. And really, everything is easy for us because everyone trusts us. Everyone trusts our system. Everyone sees us as like a safe haven. So when the rest of the world, when there's chaos, you go to America. Okay? But if you look at the actual results, they are not covering their obligations. They promised people stuff. They thought that, they underestimated how much funding will require. They underestimated how much return they could get in the markets. And now they do not have enough money to pay these people. And then it's going to be a complete crisis. Because technically the government won't ever fail to deliver on their obligations, because they can always print money. But if you print $200 trillion, our currency is going to be completely worthless. All right. So then you could raise taxes. Well, if you raise taxes, that will basically destroy the economy. And then even then, you're going to have to cut the amount that you're going to give to the people that are retiring. And this is like one of the biggest problems. We have $200 trillion. Besides the $22 trillion that everyone talks about, which is a serious issue, we have $200 trillion more. So that's not only like a serious issue, that means it's literally impossible. And other countries are still buying American assets. They're still buying our treasuries. And,
it's not going to last. It's not going to last because, eventually people are going to realize it's impossible. The game is over. There's literally nothing we can do because we've digged ourselves into a hole so deep, and it's a complete failure of the system. So anyway, that's all I really want to talk about today. That was episode 2 of the More Knowledge Show. We will come to you again next week. I'll see y'all soon. New article tomorrow.